Thanks so much, everybody. Welcome to Pops in the Park. My name is Scott Wood. I'm the conductor of the Arlington Philharmonic, Arlington's professional orchestra. This is a beloved tradition for us. Last year we didn't get to do it because of the heat. Can you imagine? But I see we have twice as many fans tonight, so that's... Okay. Thank you for your applause. Okay. We have a lot of great music to play for you in all sorts of different styles, and I'm going to tamp down on my usual talking habit because we may have a cell moving in this direction. So we're going to play everything really fast. No. But we're going to get you out of here before that hits. That's my promise to you. Okay? Don't hold me to that, please. We started out, of course, not only the Star-Spangled Banner, but we followed it immediately with Crown Imperial, the coronation march. There was no political effect intended by this. It's just this time there are so many amazing pieces written in the British march tradition, and it may have reminded you a little bit of the famous Pomp and Circumstance marches by Elgar. In fact, that was perfectly intentional. Of course, after graduation season, you always hear, or during graduation season, you always hear the Pomp and Circumstance March number 1, of which there are actually several marches, and you only hear part of it looped forever. And this one was written later by Sir William Walton, sort of the next generation on from Elgar, but using kind of that same style, just a magnificent piece. First time for us to play it. We're going to move into our sort of patriotic section now, that counterfactual notwithstanding, right? What would have happened if, no, but we beat the British, so now we're going to move into something called a salute to the armed forces, and we will ask for those, once you hear your service hymn being performed, please stand up so we can acknowledge you. Feel free to sing along. Is anybody here in the Coast Guard, served in the Coast Guard? I'm not seeing, all the hands are waving, but that's not you. That's not you. Okay. Well, anyway, it starts out slowly in this version, so just don't take offense. We'll pick it up soon after, okay? So here's salute to the armed forces. two anniversaries to mention just now. One is that 50 years ago we lost probably the most successful light classical composer, it was called, and that's Leroy Anderson. He wrote many, many pieces for Arthur Fiedler and the Boston Pops. That was actually one of the main things that he did. And his greatest hit, of course, was Sleigh Ride, right? Yeah. And when he wrote it, it was an instrumental, may I point out. It didn't have those confusing and horrible lyrics that were later added. And he wrote Sleigh Ride during a heat wave, so, but I'm supposed to not mention that, so we're not going to play Sleigh Ride, okay? We're going to play a different piece called Fiddle Faddle. And this is kind of it's just, a combination of kind of fiddling, which you'll hear especially in our first violin section, but also it's got a kind of a jazzy feel to it, and everybody kind of participates. There's a soft shoe shuffle. It's hard to say. It's hard to do. If you're inspired, go for it. If you recognize the tune and want to whistle along, it comes back several times in a row, so feel free to whistle as well. Here's Fiddle Faddle by Leroy Anderson. Also, the other anniversary, I said two anniversaries. The other one is today's Leroy Anderson's birthday. In a moment, you will notice the first violins moving away from me. It is nothing personal. We are making space for our soloists for the next piece we're going to perform for you. This is a piece by the Argentinian tango composer Carlos Gardel, Por una Cabeza, and it's a very intriguing and interesting lyric that actually doesn't quite make sense, but the tango melody is completely irresistible. And especially when it has been orchestrated, as it was in this case, by John Williams. And John Williams, of course, not just one of the most successful film composers of all time, but really a master orchestrator. And one of the things that's so fun about playing it for an orchestra is you're constantly recognizing references that he's put in to other composers, other pieces, other styles of music. There's actually one wonderful section in here where he sort of emulates the sound of the typical Argentinian tango instrument, which is called a bandoneon. It's kind of a squeeze box, and it has such a gorgeous. The orchestration just kind of captures that beautifully. This was for a film called Scent of a Woman, an Al Pacino feature, as I recall, and this somewhat obscure tango was kind of resurrected in a sense. And it is now this masterful arrangement with all the different orchestrational sounds, the beautiful and mysterious bass clarinet solo near the beginning. It's just really a majesty of orchestration and such a beautiful tune. Today, performing with us, we have a student who just graduated, speaking of pomp and circumstance, just graduated from St. Albans High School in Washington, D.C. He's an Arlington resident. And he's heading to Princeton in the fall, and an amazing player. Please welcome to the stage Enzo Baldanza. You might have noticed that in his bio it says that Enzo plays the Guarneri. He is not playing the Guarneri today. That is safely stored in a cool place. All right. Oh, they've decided to forgive me. And by the way, I will say, playing in these conditions can be really tricky, really slippery fingers. I guess it helps a little bit with the glissandi. You know, it's hard for everything else. We are going to move on to Broadway and Hollywood at this point. I dressed for the occasion. I wore my white jacket. When I was putting it on, my wife said, "Oh, it's going to look like James Bond," you know. And then she amended it later and said it's more like it gives kind of a soda jerk look. So I'll go with that one anyway. We're going to play some great Broadway Showstoppers. That's the name of this tune. See if you can recognize these. And they're just hits from the span of all these great Broadway tunes. How are we doing, by the way? Am I even looking in the right direction? No. No, it's this way. Okay. Which way? Oh, thank you so much. Somebody asked, tell me about the Arlington Philharmonic. And it was my mom. She's sitting right there. About the Arlington Philharmonic, you asked. Well, we perform many other concerts during the year, so bring yourself, bring your fans to all our concerts. We have usually 2 or 3 full orchestra concerts, which we often play in some of the wonderful auditoriums in the county's high school system. We also play sometimes chamber music concerts, smaller ensembles. We just did a concert a couple of weeks ago at the Arlington Central Library with the Woodwind Ensemble. And so we're trying to kind of reach out into the community. One of our sponsors today, of course, is Arlington Arts. And the folks there have helped us not only present some of the concerts that you're hearing now, but actually in the coming season, we have an opportunity to bring it's called a placemaking grant, and it's going to bring us all over the county in places that we don't even normally participate. But all our main concerts, I should say, are free and open to the public. We do have sometimes some fundraising concerts and things like that specifically. But please come be an audience member. Consider joining us as a volunteer, as a board member, just as a fan, again, to help us spread the word about great music in Arlington, help us reach new folks that haven't come to our concerts before. So does that answer your question? Okay. Okay. She loves me. We're going to move on now to play for you the Mission Impossible theme. Of course, that movie just came out recently, another new one, and a great one. And one of the things that's so funny about this piece is it's written in 5/4, which is a really unusual time signature. So as soon as you start to keep track of it, you lose track of it very often. It gives it a little extra kind of frisson, when you hear that thing moving around. Now, actually, in some of the movies, not to say that things are sometimes dumbed down or anything, but a lot of times they've taken this 5/4 time signature and they changed it into 4/4 or 6/4, which is a travesty. So we're going to perform it in the original 5/4. And if you want to sing along, you know the lyrics, right? Right? Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible. Okay, maybe not. But one of the great things, too, is there are sections in there. There's a section where the horns kind of stay in 4/4, and they just kind of fall out of kilter with the rest of the orchestra, which is really interesting. There's also a section where you can hear the sort of the telegraph office hard at work over. That's what I call the violins. And you can hear beep, 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 like they're sending a telegram, and that actually makes a lot of sense because Morse code, is Morse code the same as the telegram? Okay, all right, just pretend with me. I should check these notes in advance next time, but in Morse code, if you do MI for Mission Impossible, it's beep, 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 beep. Yeah, so that's where Lalo Schifrin got this idea and dressed it up in this super imaginative and interesting way. So without further ado, here is the theme from Mission Impossible. we're going to play another recent movie hit. Actually, this one's based on a really old, nearly 100-year-old hit, but that's Wicked. And, of course, it became a Broadway show some 20 years ago, and then again revived just now for the silver screen. If you may not have heard all the tunes from Wicked if you haven't seen the movie or the show, unless you have kids of a certain age, and then you've heard it all too much. But I'm sure you'll enjoy this wonderful arrangement. It brings you a bunch of the hits, kind of scored in an imaginative way. And if you haven't seen the movie, it's worth finding out. Okay, raise your hand if you've seen the movie. By the way, look at that! Wow. Raise your hand if you came to an Arlington Philharmonic concert last year. Okay. No reason. Here's Wicked. Well, we are at the last tune of our concert, and I see that we have managed to keep our promise to you. We are going to play for you, of course, a great Washington resident. He grew up in Washington. He later took over the Marine Band, and then later he really turned into one of the pop stars of all time, and I'm speaking about John Philip Sousa. And actually, his house in D.C. was owned by a friend of ours, Gino Madrid, right? He owned, for a while, he owned John Philip Sousa's house. So this piece is the Washington Post March, and it was commissioned to celebrate an essay contest that the Post held. And so this was played sort of just to enjoy the festivities. It's a beautifully well-known march. It has a trademark Sousa great tunes that you can imagine and remember. And then also lots of little syncopation and witty details that are packed into the music. All the music that we play for you here and in our other concerts, you don't have to know a darn thing about it to enjoy it. But sometimes it also helps to learn some about it as well. And so that's why I try to introduce all the pieces that we play for you. Again, I want to invite you to please come visit us, come say hi after the show. We've got some wonderful volunteers and board members in the back waving their hands. They're hands instead of fans, or they're both. Thank you for your help, folks. Check in with those people. We got the Encore Learning people back there, too. Thanks, Encore Learning, for helping us out, for everything you do. Thanks again to Arlington Arts. And again, and above all, thanks to all of you for coming to celebrate this occasion with us. It's the Washington Post March.